Oi, yeah, it's the big one. It is the big one, man. Champions League final, man. PSG versus Arsenal. Mikel Arteta versus Luis Enrique. Dembele versus Saka. Declan Rice versus Vitinha. Marquinhos versus Gabriel. Hakimi versus who's on that other side? Calafiori. Listen, it's going to be a good game, man. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a very tactical battle between two very tactical sides, for different, varying different reasons. And I think they're the two best sides in Europe this season. I don't think anybody's going to disagree. I think they're the two sides who've deserved to get to the final. And I think they're the two sides that I look at right now and for very different reasons. And I think to myself, yeah, you know what? No matter what you think about the football of either team, they deserve to be there and they play good football. Again, like I said, whether you like an Arsenal style, whether you think a PSG style is a little bit too open, it doesn't really matter. Like, I feel like they play in a way that's obviously conducive to the players that they've obviously got. And I think it works. Well, clearly it works because they're both in the final, both have won their own, league competitions as well. And they're going to be looking to send off their players to the World Cup with a Champions League trophy now, whether it's going to be a back-to-back for PSG or whether we're looking at Arsenal potentially winning their first ever European title. I don't know. I really, really don't know. But I'm kind of leaning on one side, but a part of me is also sitting there saying, I don't know. I really, really don't know. I think we might be in for a surprise potentially. So listen, I'm here. We're going to take a look at it real quick. I think you guys have probably seen many videos over the last couple of days in the lead up to the game. Arsenal fans, PSG fans. I was thinking about this in terms of how should I kind of do this, but I do feel I don't want to patronize anybody in doing this kind of video. I feel that you already kind of know how both teams play. And I don't think that they're going to necessarily change their setup. I do think this is going to be a battle of really and truly just whose tactic is going to be better on the day, to be honest with you. So I think it's not necessarily about, oh, you know what, we're going to take a little look at, in terms of the style of play of kind of both teams, so to speak, and where I possibly think an Arsenal might be able to get the better of a PSG and obviously vice versa. But I do think we already kind of know how they're going to play. So we don't really need to waste too much time on that. So I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my own time. So let's just kind of get in. So obviously we kind of already know when it does come to PSG in terms of they're a team who rely quite heavily on rotations. And I'm talking not just rotations in midfield, I'm talking the entire team. It seems that a lot of their team have been given that level of freedom. And I think one thing that I've heard having players who are able to play in zones, having players who are comfortable playing in those zones. Hence why I guess he was so particular about the type of players he would sign in order to get this tactic to kind of work for him. So players like a Joao Neves, like a Vitinha, having Fabian Ruiz there, players like Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Ousmane Dembele, these type of players are all very comfortable playing in certain zones. Hakimi, Mendes, Marquinhos, Pacho, the job that he's been able to do, since coming into the side. I think having those type of players, I think, is so key for all of this to actually work. But what I like the most, really and truly, about someone like Luis Enrique is he's got his style, he's got his identity. Like I say, it's one of those things, you like it, you don't like it, it works, it won't work. It is what it is, right? And I do think you do need a specific, bit like Pep Guardiola, you need a specific type of player in order to kind of get this work, i.e. what you guys can obviously see on the screen. So here you can see Hakimi is in the center forward or strikers position. When do you rarely see a right back or right wing back, whatever you want to kind of call him, in those kind of positions? Again, it's because of the comfortability. It's because of the functionality that his team and his players understand and they've bought into. That's something I find so key with managers buying into what they're trying to do. Whether you like it or not is always irrelevant to me. Can you just buy into what we're doing? Because I have a goal. Every manager wants to win. No manager goes out to lose. So if you buy into what the manager's asking you to do, whether you feel you can or can't do it, I reckon if you buy into it, you'll surprise yourself. You really would surprise yourself. Obviously, here you can see one of the things that PSG do like to do, and obviously this is against Bayern Munich in the Champions League this season, is they'll get both of their wingers to double up on one specific side in order to have that defender worrying about two players. But you're also there sitting there thinking, well, then what happens to the other side of the pitch? Let's just say it breaks down. Will they have space? Well, no, because you've got the fullback, i.e., let's say in this case, they're on the left-hand side. You'll have the fullback Hakimi, who will be in that kind of right wing, right back, wing back kind of area, which then allows for the team to be able to do things like this. It's almost like it almost seems very automatic when we watch PSG. Everything is just bang, bang. Two players are going to go there. Okay, we're going to go here. We're going to move in this direction. We're going to turn left. We're going to turn right. We're going to move forward. We're going to move diagonally. It's all automatic. I mean, listen, it must take a lot of work in order to kind of get, you know, things like this done. But like I said, it's being able to buy into these kind of things, which will allow for a team like PSG to perform the way that they do. One of the major things, obviously, that we all know is Ousmane Dembele. This obviously against Liverpool. He is a player who is always going to drop deep. He is always putting himself in positions whereby it's going to be difficult for the opposition defender to be able to kind of track. You guys can obviously see here on your screen, he's always floating, constantly floating. He's never ever standing still. And the thing is, if you try to kind of go with him, so let's just say the team is obviously, you know, move forward here. If I move these midfielders into this position here, for example, and then obviously you got your wingers on either side, right? So if this is happening, usually you think, okay, more often than not, players usually, they kind of operate in this kind of area here. Obviously, we know Haaland, for example, he might just stay there. But most forwards, I guess, they're always trying to, you know, they think, oh, can I make a run here? Can I make a run there? Should I come a little bit short? No. Dembele is doing all of this. He drops right into these kind of positions here. So when he drops into those kind of positions there, you kind of have a choice, right? Now, you've got one of two options here. You can either get someone like one of your centre backs to follow him, no problem. I'm not going to say that that's an issue, but you know, if you do that, this happens. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, now that gap opens because all it takes is whoever's got the ball here, whether it be Vitinha, Joao Neves, or whoever, all they've got to do is now play that ball inside there. Now, whoever's on that right-hand side, boom, they're in on goal, and then Bob's your uncle, right? So you could do that, but again, it's going to require you to really press aggressively in order for that to actually, you know, actually work. Or you could kind of just let him roam, I guess. But if you do let him roam, what usually happens is he seems to be able to find these kind of positions. So if you got this guy coming towards him, the ball usually seems to be able to get into him here. Once he's in this position, Dembele is very good at being able to drive with the ball. And then now he's got options. He's got his right winger making that run inside there. And then he's got this happening here. Remember as well, with the fullbacks, they're always here. They're usually in these kind of positions. They're usually set back there. And then you can kind of go. So once that kind of happens, there's a lot of options. You know, if he helps out here, if the right back decides he wants to go and help out there, Hakimi, we know he's very, very attack-minded, so he's going to want to help out in those kind of things. Again, looking back at that other image that I just showed you, where they start to then overload on one side of the pitch. But you remember, you still got Ousmane Dembele running with the ball. So you can't keep backing off for too long because he's a player who can shoot with both left and right foot. So then it creates its own, you know, kind of problems with that. So that obviously, again, as I said before, we know that that's what I feel, unless Enrique is going to completely change up what he's been doing and surprise everybody, which, listen, I wouldn't put it past him. I feel like that's something that Ousmane Dembele is going to try, you know, potentially do. Arsenal have obviously faced off against PSG a couple of times, obviously group stage, I believe, and then, of course, in knockout stage in the semi-final, you know, of last season. Overall, I would say probably Arsenal probably had... Well, it's a difficult one because obviously PSG won, but Arsenal did have quite a bit of joy, if I'm being honest with you. And I think one of the things that I kind of looked at, you know, when I was looking back at that game, and again, that was really the only thing I could kind of see, you know, in terms of, okay, well, how can Arsenal, I guess, go out there and potentially beat, you know, a PSG? Like I said, you can go man to man, but I think in that game, Arsenal kind of sat in this, would I say, quote unquote, mid kind of block and didn't go too aggressive until the ball obviously had reached certain parts, you know, of the pitch. And then they would press quite aggressively. But one of the things I think that they did pretty well was when the ball was in these wide areas, again, when the ball's in these wide areas, you haven't got many angles. I mean, you can, if the ball's here, for example, with the left back as an example, you can go down the line. You can kind of go, I guess, back. You can potentially go in the middle, but the angles are what Arsenal are probably going to be looking for, because here we can then crowd it off there. We can then, even if there's a PSG player here, there's I guess a PSG player here, we can kind of crowd that off there. Then it allows potentially for us to be able to harass them into making a decision. Let me go back to the goalkeeper, but or go back to my centre back. If I do that, this can happen. If he goes there, you know what I mean? All of a sudden now you're on them. You're on them quite aggressively. Whereas I feel if you start to play, I guess, through the middle quite a bit, it's too much that's going on. If you can allow PSG to play through that middle of the park, they can do their rotations. They can have Dembele drop in deep, Kvaratskhelia, Doué, Barcola, whoever, running in from the sides, and then Mendes and Hakimi are. It's too much. It's way too much to have to deal with. And they've got way too much quality in order for you to be able to handle that at all times. Now, for Arsenal, there's going to be space for Arsenal to be able to exploit PSG, should I say, there's going to be space in behind these fullbacks. Mendes not so much, I reckon. I reckon Mendes can kind of hold it down if needs be, but Hakimi is going to leave quite a lot of space. For me, Arsenal, because PSG are going to be, I think, going to be going man-to-man, I believe Arsenal should be trying to stretch the play as much as possible. And then what you can then potentially do with that, once you start stretching the play, have your fullbacks are going to be quite crucial. So I don't know what's happening in terms of their fullbacks, who's going to play, who's going to start. But I do feel that if they can start coming in field and potentially joining play at times, not all the time, again, you're going to have to be very disciplined with that. But I do feel that you can also create your own overloads potentially. So I'll even use the right-hand side, because as I said, I think Hakimi will be playing quite high up, even though he can get back. I do want to reiterate that they can both get back. They're very fast. They're very strong runners, so they can easily get back. But I do think every now and again, and that was something that I did notice against PSG prior, is that Arsenal were able in that second half of, I think it was I want to say it was the first leg. I think that's the one where Saka missed the chance. They were very good at being able, I think Trossard came on. Arsenal were good at having those left side or left-hand sided combinations. And once they had those combinations, I did feel that PSG were starting to struggle a little bit, because then it was about the game, because you're doing man to man. If your man is all the way out wide, for example, all the way over here, if he's all the way there, remember, that's going to leave quite a lot of space for this player. Or, for example, for someone like Declan Rice, someone who is a very strong runner, to run into these gaps. But now you've got this situation going on. Now, centre-back obviously could easily be able to come over, but all of a sudden now, this starts to happen. So now you've got players, obviously, they're drawn into these kind of positions here, as an example. And then if I say, let's put the ball with Martinelli as an example, right? If he's or Trossard, for example, if he's over there, on that side. Now, because everybody is still trying to do this kind of man-to-man, obviously it's not going to be as strict, I reckon, kind of thing, especially when you've got late runners, something, again, that I think PSG will potentially struggle with. If you've got players like Declan Rice who can make runs from here, so who's tracking him here? If it's this guy, but then he allows for, Declan Rice to then run on, what then happens with this man here? Declan Rice is now run on. Is he going to then run on to this guy? Okay, if I follow him here, what happens to this guy? If they're both running in the same place, do we both go into the same position and then allow for this kind of space to happen here? And then, of course, you've still got to remember Bukayo Saka. You've still got to remember the other. Again, these are the moments. And I think Arsenal and Arteta are very smart in terms of trying to pick their moments when they could attack, when they should go forward, when we should sit, and things like that. And again, in my opinion, it'll be the same on the left-hand side where Nuno Mendes is that's where the spaces are going to be. Whether Arsenal are able to exploit that, obviously that's that's kind of a different question. So as I said, I just don't think it's going to be a case of PSG changing the way that they kind of do things. I think they're going to do things in the way that they know best, which is to play that kind of football with the midfield rotations, whether it's Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, Zaire Emery, Joao Neves. Like it won't really matter, for them, because I feel that they look at it in a case of as long as we can execute our plan, I feel like we're good enough to be able, to hurt Arsenal. But again, Arsenal do have their own weapons, whether it's, for example, getting someone like a Gyökeres to, potentially, stretch the game, a little bit, to get the team into positions, into those corners, to be able to double up with a Bukayo Saka, with a Martinelli, Trossard, whoever's kind of playing on those sides. Can Declan Rice make those kind of late runs, into the box? Will that be able to, potentially help them? Again, how about using their biggest weapon, which is maybe we use corner kicks and free kicks and set pieces, and we slow the game down and we interrupt the rhythm and the flow of a PSG who want to get into their rhythm, because they're probably going to try and, start quite fast. We saw it in the last Champions League final against Inter Milan. Quick, fast starts. That's what they want to do, because they want to try and catch teams off guard. Maybe Arsenal hold them for a little bit. I'm not saying PSG are a naive team. They can sit there and just hold the lead. If they need to hold the lead, they can bide their time. And I always look at PSG and think to myself that they're a team that always playing kind of fits and spurts kind of thing. They'll play really good for like 20 minutes where you're like, they're just super unstoppable, but they might not score as many goals as they probably should do. Then they have like a 20-minute period where it's a bit like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's a bit meaty, but it's good enough for against most teams. Maybe not the top teams, but it's good enough, right, to be able to get past whoever they're playing. And then they have minutes where they're just not really that good. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh, okay, they look really open. All of a sudden there's gaps and there's spaces, and all these kind of things are happening, and etc. etc. So I think that's kind of how I'm looking at it from an Arsenal perspective and from a PSG perspective. I think PSG, as I said before at the beginning of this video, we kind of know what they're going to do. We know how they're going to play. We know who their danger men are. I've named them already. You guys already know who they are. It's more, how can Arsenal kind of maybe combat that? Who are the danger men for Arsenal? Like I said before, you've got Bukayo Saka, you've got Trossard, Martinelli, Havertz or Gyökeres. Again, I don't know who they're going to actually play in this game, but I'm looking at players like your Declan Rice's when he makes those late runs into the box. Eze, if he were to start the game. Ødegaard, if he does start, how disciplined is he going to be? Who's going to mark someone like Ousmane Dembele? Are they going to allow for him to free roam in that middle of the park? If so, is someone going to be touch tight with him? Are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to allow for him to be able to turn, or they're going to be, straight on him? Again, these are a lot of questions. Listen, I'm just one man, right? These are the kind of questions I think that Mikel Arteta is inevitably going to have to answer, in this kind of game. But again, I'm not saying he can't answer them. I'm not saying he or Arsenal cannot answer these kind of questions. They're good enough to be able to win the game. That much I can definitely say for certain. So if they were to win, I'm not going to say it's going to be a surprise. But of course, PSG will come into this game as favourites. In my opinion, the best team in Europe. They're already looking at potentially going back to back, which hasn't been done since, of course, Real Madrid, who are the kings of Europe, right? So there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot going in both teams' favors. It's just about really who locks in this kind of game. But let me know in the comment section. I really, really would like to know. And again, like I said, I just kind of really wanted to kind of go through this a little bit quickly, but also, like I said, it's not about patronizing anybody. I feel that we all kind of know which way the game's kind of going, but I would love to get your thoughts on, what do you think is going to kind of happen? Please let me know in the comment section. I'll reply to as many posts as I possibly can, and let me know who you think is going to win the game. Who I think is going to win the game is going to be in the comment section. Make sure you guys leave a comment. Stay safe, same energy. I'll catch you guys soon, man. Boom.